Welcome to this episode of Digital Diary, Adventures of a Computerized Quilter. Today on our episode, we're actually going to talk about lots of different ways that we use the draw text feature from within CreativeStudio. So I know I've used it on a couple of quilts in different ways. How do you guys use draw text? Paige, what's your
Oh,
number one use?
my number one use is to add a label or a name or a date somewhere in the quilt, either on the top or on the back. And that's where I use it a lot. I know there's other ways.
So do you charge extra for that?
Oh, yes. We just call it a label and it's extra. And it's usually $10 for 1 to 3 words, and then it goes up for $5 every extra 2, 3 words, because I don't want a monologue or anything like that. Yeah.
Really long.
And you can make the letters bigger, which is nice.
So Georgia, how do you use it the most?
Probably mostly that personalization on the quilt top, whether it's a quilt label or sliding somebody's name in or initials. But I also tried something I saw on a Facebook Live, and it was 2 pieces of, I think it was Minky. I did Minky and fleece, and I did raw edge applique to personalize the quilt, and I did it really big. I think the letters were 7 inches or something like that.
And we have pictures of that in just a minute. So it's really
that
cool.
was fun, and it was ridiculously easy. I can't even tell you how easy it was. It was great.
Deanne, what's your favorite use?
I do a couple things. One, I may change out words that are within a pattern that I own, and put somebody's name in. And I've also used draw text to place somebody's name in different places, especially on t-shirt quilts. And then they have to go hunt for it, if it's for a grandchild. Or I even had one where I used draw text to put in a whole poem.
Wow.
Wow.
Very cool. I have a quilt planned where it's just words across the entire quilt, but I haven't stitched it out. I need to get to it. It's on my list. Okay, so let's go take a look at some of the pictures that we sent in. Okay, let's take a look at some of the pictures that we've seen with our draw text feature. So the first couple are mine. So this is kind of like where you pull out part of a pattern and stick it in there. So this one, I just squeeze that quilt love in between everything else on the quilt. So this one, I also had to use that apply feature of draw text to get that little curve in there. I really like that one.
Yeah, I love that.
Oh, I like that.
That's the next question everybody has. What font is that?
Exactly. So this is the dude quilt that I did. So Big Lebowski, but she wanted abide in there. So we put it in the background in order to make it pop. Then I did that little hand-guided micro stippling kind of in the background.
I like that.
I like that too.
Yeah.
Well, the font thing, you can get different fonts depending on what computer you're on. And my desktop has more fonts than my Statler. So what I'm doing is I will make a label or something on my desktop and try all the different fonts and make the pattern and bring it over.
Yep, me too.
You can actually buy fonts to load onto your computer so that you have more fonts. And there are even, have you heard of Wingdings? There are fonts that are actually little pictures, and you can use those.
Okay. So this is my bit flip quilt. So I have a computer background. So this says panic in binary.
Oh, looks like numbers to me.
It's in hexadecimal, so it works. But again, this speaks to this is still that block font. We're not doing cursive yet. And you can definitely tell, especially in the black light version, that I stitched these out more than once. And since the block letters all come in, like I could just stitch it out, make it, reverse it, make it unsewn again, and stitch it again. So that's how I did that one, is stitch it once, change it, convert it unsewn, sew it again.
You almost need that extra thickness to make that glow in the dark thread show. One string of it won't do it.
Well,
Yeah,
and this is
I
not
like.
the glow in the dark, it's just the black light sensitive, but yes.
Oh, okay. I have a different way of doing multiple layers, which I guess we'll get to that in a bit.
We will, but you do that with cursive, so that's kind of different.
I do it the same thing with the
block.
the blocks too.
Yeah,
me too.
So here's a picture. There's your raw edge applique, Georgia.
Yeah, and I didn't have a picture of the whole big quilt, but probably the only thing I would say if you're going to do this is to make sure that your letters are, big enough and you don't have all these little tiny spaces, because you do have to trim out, like you can see in the E, I had to trim out that inner portion of the loop in the E, but it really went well. And this one, this was what was on the backing. The fabric that I used for the front name is actually on the backing and the binding. So it was fun, and it went very fast. You just went around the edge, trimmed it, and I do believe I went around the edge twice.
I was just gonna ask.
That's what I was gonna ask too.
I'm in the air on the side. I'm very cautious about that kind of stitching, and since that fabric was really poofy and that nice technical term, I just wanted to be sure, so I did 2 trips around just to make sure it's secure.
And how big are these letters? You said big.
I think they were like 7 inches, because
that's
like
a quilt in itself. That's great.
Well, it is, and the whole thing, I did the pattern. The pattern was fairly dense, but I did it large because with all that thickness of minky and fleece and batting, because I still like to put batting in it, it really needs to be a bigger pattern to look really good. So
did you put an extra layer of like fleece under those letters to make them pop like that? Or
yes,
just the fabric?
I did because I can't help it. I just really wanted it to pop, and I did it. I turned it on the right side. You can see it's level, but it actually is going up the right side. So the length of the quilt is where Lexi is going down. So I like the style of that, because then you could fold it over your quilt, over your couch, and the name would show up the side. So anyway, I just had fun. It was a quick and easy, everybody and love wants a quilt, and I don't have time to piece. So I recommend this. And I think it was great, because I think the Facebook Live, it was a stadium quilt, something just to stay warm. And so this kind of thing is perfect for that.
We can probably go back to the Gamble Facebook page and scroll back and find that.
Yeah, I can't remember. Was it Holly? It was Holly, wasn't it?
Heather?
It was somebody up north. And I remembered when I saw it, I said, ooh, I'm doing that, because it's another quick and easy. And she does it a lot, I think she said t-shirt quilts as well as stadium quilts. But quick and easy. And look, who doesn't love the texture on Minky?
Oh, I love it. I have a question on the batting though. How did you do that? You said you had extra batting underneath just the letters?
Yeah, so I laid down batting and fabric, and then after it's stitched, I trimmed, and you can't see the batting.
No, you can't.
And I think probably that extra line of stitching maybe helps that, that it's out, but it wasn't hard. I do recommend either very tiny little sharp scissors, the ones that curve up, or true applique scissor, there's a reason for those because it keeps you from accidentally cutting the quilt itself. It has that nice flat blade that protects and keeps you from cutting. So I already had a pair of those, but you would have to be careful if you don't. I wouldn't use just any scissors to trim out. You'd actually cut the quilt, I think, too
Yeah,
easy.
you need the right tool for the job.
You really do. I do. But you can see this name was absolutely perfect to do
Yes.
because there's not a lot. It's pretty simple. And the nice thing with the text feature is you can make it as big as you want. So, obviously most of the time we're making it small, 2 inches or less, but not me. I blew it up to 7 inches tall, I think. So
Well, and I think you could just use the 2 layers of fleece on one of
yeah,
those quilts, and it would be perfect.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. I love this one at the bottom, Georgia. This is
Oh,
the
I
couching.
especially love the little guy.
There is that.
Sebastian, and that's, so again, the text, I will tell you this, if I'm going to couch the text, is the cursive text, I tend to stretch out the pattern. And here's why. I tried it at first, and like your E doesn't get a separation where the little loop is, and your A barely separates because the yarn fills it up. So when I do this, it works obviously much better with cursive to couch, but pull out, that's my little handy tip, pull it out so it separates those little spaces.
So did you add the little dot over the I separately?
Yes. Well, yeah, I mean, it looks better. You got to have it. So,
I love this. I honestly have to admit, I have not tried couching yet.
oh, so easy. It is. The trick
Gotta be-
is use yarn with substance. Don't try. I don't even mess with little skinny stuff. And he's 2.5, and it's been washed. We don't know how many times. It's still there. So, but having that yarn of substance, I think, helps because it really tacks it down.
Very,
Goes
very.
on my to-do list and
Yeah.
things I have to do.
It isn't hard. Not with the couching foot. It's really easy. But do stretch out those letters or you end up with kind of globs instead of letters.
Okay. So I think this is a label that you made,
Yeah.
right, Georgia?
Right. This is the kind of label that I make. Now, when you get ready to stitch it, I usually pull up that top layer, the quilt, and by the way, do yourself a favor and mark where you need to do it because you don't want to get to the bottom and now you don't have enough room to put the label. And most of the time the labels are, I don't know, 4x6, something like that. And I pull up that top layer and I will usually put a little layer of interfacing on top of the batting because I just like the dimension with the batting. And then make sure you flip this over. That's the last step because it needs to look backwards to you because it's going to be on the back of the quilt. And that's why we lift the top cover up because it would be backwards if we didn't, right? If it stitched on the top. And I'm like Paige, I do a couple of things. It's really easy to pop a different bobbin in so you have heavier thread and a different contrast, or do multiple runs, like run it once. And a lot of times what I do is take it and just move it just a tiny little bit. It gives it a little more depth. And I'm like, Paige, I do charge and it depends on how big. And I keep a project just for quilt labels. So I don't have to remake the basic shapes. And I don't want to do all that. And then all I have to do a lot of times is just, put in a few different words, like dates and names.
Well, the frames themselves are cool.
Right.
And you've got something very simple here, but you could do a very
Oh,
ornate frame. And by having a project specifically for it, they're already done. You just add in the
exactly.
text.
Yeah. And apply is perfect for that. I've done it with little tiny little tulips around and things like that, little hearts that go around. But apply is your friend on the outside frame.
Okay. So I think this next one is a picture of a label you've actually stitched out page.
Yes, this is one that I've done, and here you can see a close-up of the stitching, and this is on the front. The back was very busy, but this black area was perfect for some red thread. And this is 7 layers of thread. So I stitched it each one 7 times. I call it a 7-layer salad. And it makes it very noticeable, and because you have the precision of the Statler, or you could do letters with an elevate too, I guess, the needle is going to go down in the same place every time. You can see where those stitches. They've gotten bigger because the quilt has shrunk. So
Mm,
the next layer is like a half of a thread width off.
mm, looks
And
great.
so each word is done 7 times over and back and over and back. The numbers, you have to have individuals, and that's the same with the block letters. If you
Mm,
were to do this with block letters, each letter would have to stitch independently.
mm.
And that's the one thing with draw text period is you're definitely going to end up with those jump stitches unless you find interesting ways to deal with them.
Yep.
And I think you always have to say with text that not all, not all fonts are the same, and not all fonts are even usable because they're designed for typing actually. And some fonts, when you make them big, your circle becomes many straight lines, and it doesn't come across very pretty. So I just keep a little running list of my favorite ones, and once in a while I'll get adventurous and start digging through, but some of them are horrible. So
Yeah, that's
pay
a very good point, especially when you make them larger.
right. It's that the bigger you make
Hmm.
them, the harder it is to get those nice smooth lines.
And when you do one of these for one customer, they don't know you use the same font on someone
Yeah.
else's. If it works, it works.
Well, all they want is to be able to see it clearly, honestly.
Yes.
I don't think I've even had a discussion about what kind of font. I just show them some labels and they pick one. So
Yeah, I've had the font discussion, but
yeah, I don't.
Okay. So do you want to kind of walk us through your procedure here, Paige?
okay. Well, this is how I do it with the text. So I go in and I put out there all the words that I want, and each one of them is an individual pattern. So if it were a block one, you would have a bunch of block patterns. And here with the text, I can rearrange the words, and that's the third little picture there where when I typed them in, they were all in one line. So then I arranged them and made some bigger, some smaller. They're patterns. And with this initial J, there was a jump stitch on there. So I did have to divide off that jump stitch. And then I combined all the patterns. And what I can do is rubber stamp those patterns. And so I get a ton of them. Like I said, 7. And then I will use the blue handles and snap them all together so they're all on top of one another. And then I click off and I click back on. So I only have one pattern selected. And because they're snapped on the beginning and the end, if you do an order join, they're going to all snap together and run front left to right, right to left, left to right, and back and forth until all 7 are completed. And you can do the same thing with one single letter, like a 0 or a 2. That's what I did with the numbers. So the order join makes them so continuously.
See,
Love
I've
order
never
join.
thought of that.
Love it.
Yeah, that's great.
And I've done this with motifs as well, that I want, like a fish or a mushroom. I did a mushroom recently.
And
And that's what gives you that
and leaves and
denser
all sorts
thread.
of things. Yeah.
Oh, leaves. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I think you did a Facebook Live on that one too.
I did a Facebook Live on that one with my leaves.
So they can go go look at that and see how you did it. And this is how you do it with text. So.
This is how you do it with text. Yeah. And you can, quilt something like I did on the last one. It's an overall design. And I go back and I put this on top. And if I have it on the top, I usually do that only if I have a very busy back. Because as Deanne and Georgia both said, you're going to have those words backwards on the back.
Exactly. I always make sure they understand what it's going to be on the back. And if you have a busy back, it really doesn't matter. But if it's plain, it's going to look awkward.
Yep. So I thought it might be fun real quick for us to pop over into CreativeStudio so that you guys can kind of give me hints and tips and tricks. And we can kind of look at text from that point. Okay, so draw text is up here. It's one of my icons at the top. I can click anywhere on the screen to place it. Okay, what should we put in here? Camel?
Sure.
I love my Statler. Yeah.
So this is just that block Arial font, right? And I don't have any of my flags on there, but if I had my flags on, and I'll turn them on in just a second, there's a lot of jump stitches here.
Mhm.
So we might want to maybe do this again. So I'm going to hit again. And this time we can go and maybe pick a different font. I have quite a few on this computer. So let's just see. There we go. There's a completely different look. And we can change the height. That's down there. So let's do another one.
I love the again feature for this.
I love again. I love again for just about everything. So this time I'm going to click on that cursive. So let's go ahead and hit OK. And there's where all of these come in as individual. That's a full pattern. That's a full pattern. But these are all individual letters. So let's go ahead. I'm going to put my flags on real quick, just so you can see all of those jump stitches in the block letters. And there's that one jump stitch hanging out with our capital letter. So that's one of the main reasons you might want to use the cursive, right? Is to get rid of those jump stitches.
And some letters are worse than others, like this one isn't even as bad as it can be, where, you have so many interior spaces like the A.
Yep.
Yeah, A's
we have
and
the
E's.
A, we have the
B.
I.
Oh.
There's no E's in camel, so.
Yeah.
Yep. No O's. Usually there's that interior O.
Right.
Okay, well, since we're looking at this, what about stitch length? I know I will increase my stitch length when I'm doing something that is smaller.
So I can
That's
come in and
something
check
anybody wants to.
You mean the stitches per inch? You
Yes.
increase the number, yeah.
Yes.
Which decreases the stitch length, yeah.
Yes.
And
so you would take this up to a 16?
Yeah, or a 15 anyways.
Yeah.
Only because going around smaller circles or that little dot on the eye.
You don't want them to look like octagons or something screwy.
Yeah.
Right?
And stitch in points is a good thing to have on when you're doing this.
And that all comes down to how big. I mean, if you're doing it, really small, but if you're doing it big, you may not need to. It just depends.
Yep, definitely. So I went ahead before we started this session, and I went and played with my web dings and wing dings.
Oh,
So this is the whole alphabet, lowercase and uppercase. These are the wing dings on my computer, and these are the web dings. So you can see all of the different options that gives you.
wow.
Um,
You could use those as individual motifs.
absolutely.
You can. Yeah.
I love this ampersand. I was thinking if you were doing like the applique with maybe just initials, that ampersand would be gorgeous.
Oh,
Oh,
on a wedding quilt. Wouldn't that
Yeah,
be
a wedding
nice?
quilt. Absolutely. That was my first thought, a wedding quilt.
Uh-huh. It definitely has some jump stitches in it, but I think it
Right.
would definitely be worth the effort.
Hey, do they have this for sign language? Wouldn't that be fun to put someone's name in sign language?
It would.
Yeah.
It definitely would.
I would
Um,
bet somebody somewhere has it. You just have to find it.
Yep.
You can see there's some good arrows. So if you need an arrow in a designer or something, you can definitely pull that from there. There's a bike, there's some cars, there's even some flowers down here. So definitely some fun things to take a look at and see about using.
That's a great way to get different designs.
I know, isn't it fun?
So definitely go out there, play with all those different text fonts on your computer, play around with the patterns that it gives you, and come up with an awesome quilt.
Well, you could make the quilt that's behind Deanne by using George's applique with the words and all kinds of things.
Yeah, it would be great using couching.
Definitely. Okay, so definitely go out there, play with that draw text feature, and show us all of the results that you guys get. We love seeing anything that you guys do coming from anything you've learned from our digital diaries. So we'll see you next time. And until then, happy quilting.
Bye.
Bye.